What's up everybody, welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony, let's jump in. Okay, happy Wednesday everybody. First up, with the Evergrande triggered China housing crisis and property developers increasingly facing a liquidity crunch and a tightening regulatory environment, land sales, a critical source of revenue for local governments, continue to perform badly. Now, I'm using land sales here as a shorthand. In the People's Republic of China, the government maintains complete ownership of all land for all intents and purposes, and what is really sold is a right to use land for a period of time, typically several decades. According to a report released by real estate data collector China Real Estate Information Corp, in the fourth quarter, as of late December, the average transaction price at land auctions in the 300 major cities surveyed was only 3% higher than the average starting price, falling from 17% in the second quarter and 8% in the third quarter. As we have discussed in previous videos, land sales are a critical source of local government revenue, representing almost as much value as direct taxation revenue for these local governments. Because a large percentage of economic growth comes from local government-directed investment, a hit to revenue can represent a hit to economic growth unless counterbalanced with increases in debt. Financial media outlet Caixin Media calculates, based on data from the Ministry of Finance, that last year government revenue nationwide from land sales dropped 10% year-on-year to 825 billion RMB, approximately $130, the fifth consecutive decline month-on-month. Hits to land sales, of course, have been unevenly spread across the country. Poorer and less economically dynamic regions, like the Northeast, have seen the largest drop in land sales. This is because these regions benefited the most, in the short term at least, from a speculative environment. When the incentive to speculate is reduced, only regions with high degrees of real fundamental demand, like Tier 1 cities or up-and-comers like Zhejiang's provincial capital, Hangzhou, will continue to see growth. For example, the China Real Estate Information Corp report discussed above shows that in Shenyang, also known by some as Mukden, and Changchun, two large cities in northeast China, also known historically in the Anglophone world as Manchuria. So in these two places, 70% and an incredible 82% of land parcels went unsold in their December auctions respectively. This is going to put tremendous fiscal pressure on these local governments and feed into a vicious cycle of decline. A large part of economic growth in these poorer regions comes from public, that is government, investment into infrastructure and subsidized industry. If local governments lose a big part of their revenue, they only really have 4 short-term solutions, as productivity gains, if possible, only come from a long-term process. 1. Reduce spending and see further growth slowdown. 2. Tax residents more and further hurt economic dynamism. 3. Borrow more and increase debt, whether directly or indirectly through, say, local government financing vehicles, state-owned banks, state-owned enterprises, etc. Or 4. Pump the housing bubble back up and hope that a better solution presents itself in 2 or 3 years' time. Now, this brings us to the next important part. Speaking of these poorer regions that are really feeling the pain, Caixin Media produced a great series of reports this week looking at the slowing real estate market and its effects on lower-tier cities across the country, which house hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens. One response from local governments is that they are simply ignoring central government regulator efforts to force deleveraging on the property development sector and the real estate market. Quote, cities across China have rolled out subsidies for buying properties or implementing policies to reduce deed tax. The northeastern Rust Belt province of Jilin said Tuesday it will guide local city and county governments to carry out subsidizing property purchases, end quote. The Caixin report found that since November, more than 15 local governments at different levels have pushed out measures to support the real estate industry, and observes, quote, while in the past local governments tended to relax restrictions for purchasing homes or guide banks to lower mortgage rates to encourage property buying, the new round of incentives directly allows people to pay less for their purchases. end quote. But with underlying real demand weak, some of these regions can only pump up speculative demand, which is not sustainable. According to a recent report by Property Research Institute, E-House China R&D Institute, at the end of November, new home inventory in the third and fourth cities monitored by the research rose 6.7% year-on-year to reach a 5-year high. The institute concluded that these lower-tier cities have quote-unquote insufficient demand. Now, on these matters yesterday, Tuesday, China finance expert at Peking University's Guanghua School of Management, Michael Pettis, observed the following, quote, "Because they have been disproportionately hurt by the consequences, lower-tier cities and provinces are trying to revive their property markets after Beijing's measures to clamp down on its excesses. I expect this conflict to play out a lot longer." On Monday, the China National Space Administration announced through state media outlets that China will set up an unmanned lunar station on the moon by 2027, 8 years earlier than previously planned, which will be jointly built with Russia. Some commentators have argued that the project has been moved forward due to increased concern in Beijing with China's competition with the United States. This may well be the case. Indeed, in recent years, Chinese space officials have accused NASA's Artemis program of pushing for a land grab on the moon. The CNSA expressed that the Chang'e 8 moon landing mission has been redeployed to bring the research moon-based project originally set for 2035 forward. Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post quoted a quote-unquote senior space scientist in China as expressing, quote, "By 2050, China could establish a leading position on the moon with cooperation from other countries such as Russia," end quote. The South China Morning Post also reported today that in order to overcome engineering challenges, China is developing a 1 megawatt nuclear reactor for space missions, 10 times more powerful than similar devices planned by NASA. Quote, "The Super Heavy rocket is also under development to lift 150 tons of payload to orbit, the same as the capacity of SpaceX's Starship," end quote. Though, unlike Starship, the rocket would not be reusable. Continuing with the quote, "According to the Chinese government, a prototype of the space plane conducted a test flight last summer," end quote. And now several key economic and financial developments for China from the last 48 hours. Quickly, if you're enjoying the episode, don't forget to hit the like button. It's the only way this video can be shown to new people. And if you're watching this for the first time, you're getting some value from the episode, maybe consider subscribing, hit that bell notification, and you'll have the most up-to-date analysis when I release these every day. Okay, let's move on. On Monday, the Civil Aviation Administration of China announced that it is investigating alleged price gouging by Turkish Airlines after a price list went viral on the Chinese internet last week, which included economy flights from Istanbul to Guangzhou or Canton as high as $30,000 one way. Although frankly, with the extremely tight border restrictions in place currently, this price is not terribly surprising. Also on Monday, mining giant Zijin Mining said that it had started production at its massive Chulong copper mine in Tibet. According to the controlling company, the combined output of this mine and a second nearby mine is expected to produce 120,000 to 130,000 tons of copper by next year. When it finally reaches full capacity, it is expected to be the largest copper mine in the world. And now in the video yesterday, I warned that Samsung's NAND flash production operations in Xi'an could be in trouble due to the strict lockdown in the city. At the beginning of the week, the South Korean technology giant told media that operations had not been affected because workers lived on site in company dormitories. Today, Wednesday, in an afternoon statement, however, Samsung announced that it would need to, quote, temporarily adjust operations, end quote, and will, quote, take all necessary measures to ensure customers are not affected, end quote. The company didn't provide any further information. The two Samsung fabs in Xi'an, valued at approximately $26 billion, account for 42.5% of the company's total NAND flash production capacity and a whopping 15.3% of the global total. Thus, serious disruptions will further affect global supply chains. Hey guys, I'd love to hear what you thought about some of the updates we covered in today's episode, so throw your comments below. Always love hearing from you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.